In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to complete on your own assignment 18-2. As normal, I'm going to click the button here, the link to get the assignment instructions in PDF, drag those to another screen so I can look at them while completing the assignment. And you're only going to need the Contacts 18 database for this particular assignment. So step 1 wants us to open that. And I'm going to click Enable Content, and then we are going to save it as per normal. Whoops. Sorry about that. And we'll go up to Desktop. And, alright. The naming convention. Last name underscore first initial underscore on your own 18-2 and enable content, and we should be ready to go. Step 2, in the contacts table, which is here, just double click to open the datasheet view. Change the first record so that your own first and last name appears. There we go, that's easy enough. And close the table. Step 3 is create one-to-many relationships between the contacts and reservations table and between the property and reservations table. Alright, to do this, go over to Database Tools and then click the Relationships button. And here we're going to double-click each of the 3 tables in the database and click Close. And I can make those a little larger so you can see all the fields in there. You can click and drag them around. Now what I'm going to do is put reservations in the middle because we're going to have to form relationships from it to the other 2. So the easy way to do that is see you've got the contact ID in contacts as the primary key. There's also a contact ID field, which is what we would call a foreign key in the reservations table. So what I'm going to do is click and hold the contacts ID from the contacts table and drag it and drop it right on top of the contact ID in the reservation table. When I do that, it brings up the Edit Relationships box, and notice that it's got contact ID on both sides, one from the contacts table, one from the reservations table, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to click Enforce Referential Integrity and Cascade Update Related Fields. I could explain what those mean, but it's a bit beyond the scope of this particular class. And then click Create. Now we're going to do the same thing over here, except the field that we're concerned with is going to be Room ID. So click and drag Room ID on top of Room ID in the reservations, and you'll get the same box, but with Room ID instead. Click Enforce Referential Integrity and Cascade Update Related Fields, and then click Create. So this is what we should be left with right here. Okay? Then click Close, and it'll ask you if you want to save it. Just say yes. Okay, step 4. In the contacts table, which would be here, use the subdata sheet for George Miller. So notice, go to George Miller. Now there's little plus signs next to it, because what I've done is I have related the information. Now, because I'm in contacts, it's showing me the related reservations for this particular customer, okay, or this particular contact, I should say. It says change the deposit amount for reservation ID 548, which would be this one, to 750. So I'll just type 750 and delete the 525 reservation. So I can click that record, right-click, and say delete, and it'll say, are you sure you're about to delete a record? Yes. Okay. All right. I can close this table now. Notice I don't have to save it when I'm modifying data. That's because Access automatically saves that for you, okay? Step 5 is to create a query based on the property table. So we're going to go to Create and use Query Wizard, simple Query Wizard, and we want to choose the property table here. Okay, that includes room name. So you can double click these, or you can click the little arrow as you select them on the left. Building name, campus, daily rate, seating capacity. Okay, and that's it. So click Next, and Next, and it wants us to name this Rooms by Seating Capacity. Notice we're not putting any spaces in the name, okay? And say Finish, and it's going to run. Okay, in the datasheet view, this is step 6. Change the daily rate for the Adams 101 room, which would be here, to $9.25. Alright. Close the query. Step 7, we're going to create a new query. We're going to end up creating about 7 different queries in here, okay? So, query wizard, simple query wizard. That includes contact last, which is here. Okay, reservation ID, so I'm going to have to drop down and choose the reservations table, and then click reservation ID. Guests, start date, end date. Okay, and then click next, and next, and we're going to name this one Salt Lake City Reservations. Okay, now it also says for all contacts that live in Salt Lake City. Okay, so what we're going to have to do here is go over to Home and then click on the Design View. This is what the query looks like in Design View. The Query Wizard creates this for us. You can do this directly, which we'll do in a few minutes, but Query Wizard often makes it easier if you're not unaccustomed to creating queries like this. By the way, it actually also creates SQL, which looks like this. This is the actual code for the query, okay? But you don't have to concern yourself with that. Okay, so here we are in Design View. It wants us to also limit this to reservations where the contact is Salt Lake City. So to do that, we'll have to do a test on the city. Okay, so I'm going to grab the city down here, just drag it to an open column. See, so it puts it down here just like the others. But under the, see where it says criteria over here on the left, if I slide out here on city, I can actually just type in Salt Lake City. Whoops. I'm not sure why it did that. Okay, it's going to put it in quotes for me. And so now when I run it, it's only going to give me reservations and contacts that are in Salt Lake City. Okay? And it wants us to also, so it doesn't want to display the city, excuse me. So what you can do is just uncheck this show box. So it will use the filter criteria that you put in there. It just won't actually display the city. Okay? And it wants us to sort the query results in ascending order by start date. So you can run, click on start date, and then say ascending right here, and it will sort them. Okay? Now we're going to close that one. It'll say, do you want to save your design changes? We'll say yes. Notice it's not because we changed data. It's because we changed the design that it requested that we save it. All right, so step 8, we're going to create a copy of this query. So the easy way to do that is just right-click and say copy, and then right-click and say paste. Okay, that's an easy way to create a copy, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And it wants us to name this one the same thing, but OR 2017 on the end of it. Okay? Alright, so let me slide this out so you can see here. Oh, something must not be right there. Not sure why it was asking for the start date parameter. We'll come back to that in a second. Alright, sort the query results in descending order by start date. So something is not quite right there. Let me delete that. I have to close it first. Alright, that's interesting. That one is not asking for that. Alright, let's try this again. Copy and paste. Alright. I'm not sure why it's asking for that. It should not be asking for a parameter there. Tell you what, I'm going to delete the start date and then add it back. Whoops. See what that does. There we go. Huh. I must have hit a key in there or something for that. Okay, now it's working properly for whatever reason. I'm not sure what caused that. Alright, so let me go back into data sheet view. It wants us to sort the query results in descending order by start date. So we'll click start date and click descending here. All right, include the field in the query results. So we're going to go back over here, and where the city we had turned it off, we're going to actually show it now. And then select only those records that have a city field of Salt Lake City, okay, or a start date that occurs on or after 1/1/2017. So the start date right here, notice the or in the criteria. So what I want to do is come down here on the or line and say 1/1/2017. Okay, now if I put it on the same line, that is an and condition. All right, in other words, it would say show me all the records that have a city of Salt Lake City and start after 1/1/2017. Because I dropped down and put it on the next line, it's or, okay, which is different logic. So I'm going to run it just to make sure it looks right. It's Salt Lake City, or they start, actually all of them are Salt Lake City, so it's actually probably a pretty poor example, but it appears to be working properly. So we can close that out, save our changes. Okay, now we're going to step 9. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy and paste, and this one is going to be the and version of it. Okay, so only those records that have a city value of Salt Lake City, same thing, and a start date that occurs on or after. This is an and. So what we're going to do, the easy thing to do here is I'm going to grab the condition I set for the start date and hit Control-C, which is cut, and just paste it on the same line as the Salt Lake City criteria. Okay, then that will make it an and condition. We'll view it. Notice that doesn't appear to be correct. Oh, I didn't put greater than 1/1/2017. Excuse me. Actually, it's probably greater than or equal to. Oh, there we go. Sorry, got the syntax wrong. There we go. That looks right. And then it wants us to use an alternate row color of orange accent 6 theme color. And the way that you do that is this button right here. We'll just choose the orange accent 6, and then it's only got 2. I wish it had done this where it had more, so you could see every other row would be orange, so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so we're finished with that one. Close and save. Step 10, create a query. So we're going to go back over here to Simple Query Wizard. Alright, and notice now I've got the options of the queries we've already created as well as the tables, okay? But I'm going to just use the tables. So it wants reservation ID in this one, start date, end date, room ID, room name, so we're going to have to switch to property to grab room name, guests, so back to reservations, guest, and daily rate. So back to property and daily rate. All right. Next. So we're going to call this one rental cost. Finish. Okay. And we're going to create a calculated field here. So it's a field that we're going to display that doesn't actually exist in the table. It's derived from the other data. Okay. The easy way to do that, click on a column here that isn't used and then click the builder. Okay, there's actually different ways to do this, but this is probably a universal way to do it, and this shows you how to build it in a lot of different ways. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take the daily rate divided by guests. Okay, now we can come out here before that and call this cost per guest and put a little colon there and then say OK. Alright, so now when we display it here, see, we've created a new column called cost per guest, and we've done the division. Now it's kind of ugly because it's displaying a bunch of decimal places, so we're going to fix that. Okay. It says we're going to display the results in ascending order by cost per guest. So click here and then click ascending. Okay, go back into design view. Now we're going to format it as currency. So the way to do that is click on the field, and then over here on the property sheet, by the way, if this is not displaying, you can click right here, the property sheet, and it'll bring this up. So we're going to choose the currency format. So if we go back over and view it, so now it looks much better, right? It's restricted it to 2 decimal places, got the dollar sign there, so it makes more sense. Okay, and it wants us to rearrange the columns, resize the column. So I'm just going to double click on all of the column dividers here to make sure that it is correct. And now it wants us to, let's see, filter. This is step 11. Filter the rental cost query so that only those reservations with a cost per guest value of $10 or more are displayed. All right, so the way to do that is on here. If I want to put a filter on it, okay? Click filter right here, and then I can say number filter greater than 10. Okay, so that's how we filter it. All right, that's a way of filtering it without altering the query design, okay, which is actually a different approach. So close this and save it. All right, now step 12 says create a query in design view. So to do that, rather than choosing the query wizard, I'm going to choose query design, and it just brings up this interface with nothing in it. Okay, so it wants us to display the sum, average, and count of the deposit field. So deposit is on reservations, so we just need to double click and display that and close the table box. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to click deposit 3 times to put it down here 3 different times, right? And we would need to click the totals button here because it's going to add the total line, which by default is set to group by. Alright, so what you can do is use the down arrow here. We're going to set one of those to sum, one of those to average, and the other to count. Okay, now when we display that, it's going to summarize the data for us. Okay, I'm going to resize these columns so there you can read the column headers. Okay, enter appropriate column names for the field. You can name those whatever you like. And then use the currency format. So we're going to go back over here and choose currency. In fact, I think you can highlight all of them simultaneously. Nope. Forgive me. I think you used to be able to do that. So you're going to have to select each one of them individually and choose the currency format. So when we view it, now it's in dollars. Okay, that makes sense. Format the sum and average values using currency. Oh yeah, the count does not need to be. I'm sorry. The count needs to be general number. Pardon me. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay, save this one as deposit stats. So I'm just going to close it. And it's going to say, do you want to save changes? Yes, and now I can name it. Deposit stats. Okay. And now, step 13, create a copy of this one. So right click on deposit stats and copy. And then paste. And it's going to want us to name this one deposit stats by guest. So we will open that one and view. Alright, and it says modify the deposit stats by guest query to display sum, average, and count of the deposit field for all reservations grouped by the number of guests, with the guests field appearing as the first field. Alright, so we're going to drag guests down here and leave it as group by, and we're going to actually drag it up. Select it first and then release your mouse and then click and drag it over so it's the first column here. And so, see, it's going to show you the guests first and then the statistics, okay, by the number of guests, which is what it's asking for. And it wants to sort the query in descending order by guests, so make sure guest is highlighted and click descending here. And then save, yes. And 14 is just, step 14 that is to compact and repair. So over to database tools, compact and repair database. Okay, and then we're finished.